I've been asked to sing at her funeral, which I consider to be an incredible honor. I mean, I've been invited to the funeral anyway.
So, there's a moment Elton John has carried quietly for years, and now he's finally talking about it. Not about the headlines everyone remembers.
When you see them walking down the aisle, what do you think you're going to feel?
Great joy, because the last time we were in Westminster Abbey, my heart sank when I saw those two boys walking behind the coffin.
But about the heartbreaking days surrounding Princess Diana's final chapter. According to Elton, what happened behind the scenes was far more troubling than most people ever realized. The deeper you look, the more unsettling the story becomes. And when you hear what he says about those final days, you may never see that tragic period the same way again. But is Elton revealing a truth the public was never meant to hear? But before we uncover the details, tell us what you think. Do you believe the full story of Diana's final days has ever been revealed to the public? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're fascinated by untold royal stories, please subscribe. Elton John reveals Diana's heartbreak. Alright, so when Elton John recently reflected on Princess Diana's final years, what came through wasn't a glamorous royal story. It was something far more heartbreaking. Behind the smiles, the headlines, and the worldwide attention was a woman carrying pressures that very few people truly understood. What makes it even more striking is that Elton had seen that side of Diana almost from the very beginning. Long before the world became obsessed with every detail of her life, he met her during the summer of 1981, when Britain was counting down the days to the royal wedding that seemed destined to become a fairy tale. Everywhere people looked, Diana Spencer was the center of attention. Yet while the public saw a future princess stepping into a dream, Elton noticed something much more human. Their paths crossed at a grand celebration held at Windsor Castle for Prince Andrew's 21st birthday. It was the kind of event most people only see in movies, filled with royal tradition, sparkling chandeliers, and distinguished guests. Elton, despite being one of the most famous musicians on the planet, later admitted that he never felt completely comfortable in those formal circles. He preferred to stay in the background, quietly playing the piano and avoiding attention. Then Diana entered the room. According to Elton, the atmosphere changed almost instantly. It wasn't because she demanded attention. In fact, it was the opposite. She had an effortless way of making people feel comfortable, as if titles and status simply disappeared around her. Within minutes, the two were talking and laughing like old friends. The formality that usually surrounded royal gatherings, at one point, they even playfully joked around on the ballroom floor, creating a moment so unexpected that guests stopped to watch. That first meeting sparked a friendship that would last for years. But as time passed, Elton witnessed the enormous weight Diana carried behind closed doors. The woman who could light up a room with a smile was often dealing with struggles the public rarely saw. Looking back now, that is the part of the story that stays with him most. Not the glamour, not the fame, and not the royal spectacle, but the painful reality that someone so loved by millions often faced her hardest battles in silence. Elton John and Princess Diana came from completely different worlds, yet they formed a friendship that few people truly understood. What brought these two global icons so close together, and how did a bond that seemed so unlikely become one of the most remarkable relationships of its time? Let's find out.
Like the untold bond between Diana and Elton John. Even in a room full of laughter and applause, Diana could feel the weight pressing down. Cameras flashed endlessly. The world scrutinized every gesture, and behind every polite smile lay exhaustion few could imagine. Yet in the chaos of royalty and celebrity, one friendship endured, built not on protocol or image, but on honesty, understanding, and shared vulnerability. Elton John. From the mid-1980s onward, their paths seemed destined to intersect. Public appearances, together with gala dinners, concerts, and charity events, always displayed the perfect image. Smiles, handshakes, and a seemingly effortless camaraderie. But behind that polished veneer, a private world thrived, one where titles and fame carried little meaning. Elton saw what few could, adored by millions, but a woman in her own right, complex, sensitive, playful, and fearful all at once. Diana, in turn, recognized Elton as a fellow traveler navigating relentless scrutiny and expectation. Behind sequins, stage lights, and paparazzi lenses, he wrestled with addiction, self-doubt, and the constant weight of judgment. They recognized each other's pain, and in that recognition, an unspoken trust grew, delicate but unbreakable. Their connection deepened through acts of courage and quiet rebellion. At a time when AIDS was surrounded by fear and stigma, Diana attended Elton's charity events, shaking hands, embracing patients, and disregarding the murmurs of scandal. "She changed everything," Elton later said. "One touch, one smile, one act of bravery, and suddenly the world began to see differently." It was her fearlessness that drew him in, a princess unafraid to defy convention, to step into the uncomfortable, to place humanity above protocol. In Elton, she found someone who didn't judge, someone who saw beyond the crown and titles into the heart of a woman struggling to live freely. Even amidst such gravitas, joy wove its way into their friendship. Diana's mischievous humor perfectly complemented Elton's flamboyant antics. She teased him mercilessly over his extravagant outfits, while he admired how she could bend royal stiffness into effortless charm. Private gatherings often became playful arenas for laughter, where etiquette bowed to spontaneity. Yet wherever they went, chaos followed. A private dinner in London once nearly erupted into a fist fight between Richard Gere and Sylvester Stallone. Each captivated by Diana's presence, Elton recalled it with a mixture of awe and amusement. She could enchant the powerful, the famous, and the arrogant without even trying, leaving the world trailing behind her charm. Beneath the laughter, however, struggles simmered quietly. Diana's private battles with bulimia, sleepless nights, and the crushing loneliness of constant observation remained invisible to the public. Elton became her confidant, offering an ear without judgment, a sanctuary from the relentless glare. They shared late-night conversations, impromptu dinners, and stolen moments away from cameras and headlines, each encountering a refuge that reminded them both that vulnerability could be met with care, not exploitation. By the early 1990s, their friendship had settled into a rhythm almost like that of siblings, teasing, supporting, arguing, and relying on one another in ways that no one else could comprehend. Yet fame and palace intrigue were unyielding forces. Misunderstandings, fueled by exhaustion, miscommunication, and pride, occasionally threatened to unravel their closeness. One confrontation, remembered vividly by both, nearly ended their bond, a reminder that even the strongest friendships require patience and understanding, particularly under the pressures of public life. Still, the bond endured. Beyond public smiles, staged photographs, and dazzling events, Diana and Elton's friendship stood as a testament to the power of human connection. It demonstrated that even under the harshest scrutiny, compassion, trust, and honesty could flourish. And though the world would never witness the late-night chats, quiet laughter, and small moments of reassurance, those who knew the truth understood the extraordinary nature of their relationship. It was a friendship that bridged two worlds, royalty and celebrity, duty and art, and proved that even in lives dominated by expectation and spectacle, true connection could shine, quietly, defiantly, and beautifully. In an era where every gesture was scrutinized, every word recorded, Diana and Elton found solace in each other's presence. Their friendship was a secret rebellion, a private testament to what it meant to care, to listen, and to stand beside someone when the world seemed determined to tear them apart. It was, in every sense, unforgettable, a rare light in a life shadowed by public pressure, a connection that endured far beyond the stages and palaces, echoing in memory, music, and the heart. What happened when the world looked closer at Diana and Elton's bond? And what unexpected truth about
Diana's hidden struggles finally revealed? Here's what's happened. Few people ever saw the real Princess Diana, the way those closest to her did, and among them was a former bodyguard who witnessed her final years from a unique perspective. Looking back, he describes a woman the world adored, yet one who often carried a burden far heavier than most people realized. To millions, Diana seemed to have everything. She was beautiful, admired, and one of the most recognizable women on earth. But behind the smiles and public appearances was someone constantly trying to find peace in a life that rarely allowed it. Long before her final years, Princess Diana entered royal life believing she had found the fairy tale she had always dreamed of. Marrying the future king seemed to promise happiness, security, and a life of purpose. However, the reality of royal life quickly proved far more challenging than anyone could have imagined. The strict traditions and expectations of the monarchy often clashed with her naturally warm, compassionate, and down-to-earth personality. As her popularity grew, so did the intense scrutiny that followed her every move. One of the earliest signs that all was not well came during a royal tour when photographers captured Diana visibly upset. At the time, various explanations were offered, including exhaustion and the pressures of travel. Yet years later, photographer Arthur Edwards reflected that the image appeared to reveal something deeper. For many observers, it became a powerful symbol that life behind the glamorous royal image was far more complicated than it seemed. As the 1990s progressed, the contrast between Diana's public image and private struggles became increasingly clear. She endured relentless media attention while facing personal challenges, including emotional distress and an eating disorder she later discussed openly. Meanwhile, her marriage to Prince Charles was deteriorating under growing strain. The continued presence of Camilla Parker Bowles in Charles's life added another layer of pain and uncertainty to an already troubled relationship. Despite these difficulties, Diana's former bodyguard remembered her not for the controversies that dominated headlines, but for her extraordinary resilience. He recalled a woman deeply devoted to her sons, committed to charitable causes, and determined to connect with ordinary people. Even under immense pressure, she continued to show compassion and strength. That remarkable contrast between a global icon and a vulnerable human being remains one of the reasons Diana's story continues to captivate and inspire people around the world. The world remembers the headlines that followed Princess Diana during her final years, but was the most important chapter of her story hidden from public view? Why do those closest to her keep returning to one defining moment in 1995? And how did it reshape everything that came after? Let's reveal the remarkable details.
The fearless act of kindness. Long before Princess Diana became known around the world as the People's Princess, Elton John had already seen the remarkable kindness that made her so different from everyone else. Their friendship was built on far more than shared laughter or appearances at glamorous events. At its heart was a shared desire to make a real difference in people's lives. One cause in particular brought them even closer together: the fight against HIV and AIDS. In the 1980s, HIV and AIDS were surrounded by fear, confusion, and misinformation. Many people wrongly believed the disease could spread through casual contact like a handshake or a simple touch. Because of this, those living with AIDS were often shunned, left alone, and treated as if they did not exist. Friends pulled away, and society turned its back. It was a painful era, and very few public figures dared to speak out and challenge these harmful beliefs. Diana refused to remain silent. In 1987, she visited a hospital and did something that instantly made headlines around the world. She warmly shook the hand of an AIDS patient without wearing gloves. It seemed like a small gesture, but its impact was enormous. In just one moment, she challenged years of fear, misinformation, and prejudice. She showed the world that compassion was far more powerful than ignorance. For Elton John, that moment became unforgettable. He later described it as one of the greatest acts of humanity he had ever witnessed. Diana knew the disease could not be passed through a handshake, and by reaching out without hesitation, she gave hope to countless people who had spent years feeling unwanted and alone. Elton often praised her ability to see people simply as human beings. She never divided the world into us and them. Instead, she believed every person deserved dignity, kindness, and respect, no matter their background or circumstances. That belief inspired Elton deeply and strengthened the friendship they already shared. Years later, while speaking at a memorial lecture held in Diana's honor, Elton reflected on how much progress had been made in HIV awareness since her passing. He said he believed Diana would be both proud and amazed to see how far the world had come, knowing that her courage had helped change countless hearts and minds. Even today, Elton continues to speak about this chapter of Diana's life with enormous admiration. To him, her greatest legacy was never her beauty, her popularity, or even her royal title. It was her extraordinary compassion, her fearless humanity, and her ability to make people who felt forgotten believe that they truly mattered. Elton John openly praised Diana's fearless humanitarian work in raising awareness about AIDS before her death. But how did he honor his dear friend after her passing? How did he feel as he paid tribute to her before millions of people around the world? And what compromise did he make to ensure he gave Diana the farewell she deserved? Let's uncover the emotional details. The heartbreaking funeral performance. The death of Princess Diana on August 31, 1997, left Britain in a state of shock, unlike anything the country had experienced in modern times. As the heartbreaking news spread across the world, millions of people struggled to accept that the beloved princess was gone. Mountains of flowers appeared outside Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and other royal residences. Handwritten notes, candles, and photographs filled the streets as people searched for ways to express a grief that seemed impossible to put into words. For Elton John, however, the loss was far more personal than it was public. He had not simply lost one of the world's most admired royals. He had lost a woman he considered one of his closest friends. Their years of laughter, shared memories, and mutual support suddenly became painful reminders of a friendship that had ended far too soon. When Elton was asked to perform at Diana's funeral inside Westminster Abbey, many assumed the hardest part would be standing before millions of viewers watching around the world. But years later, Elton admitted that stage fright was never what worried him most. Instead, he carried a fear that was much deeper and far more emotional. For years, he had performed the original version of Candle in the Wind countless times. Now the lyrics had been rewritten as a farewell to Diana, and he feared that grief might overwhelm him. His greatest concern was that, in such an emotional moment, he might slip into habit and accidentally sing the original words instead of the new tribute written especially for his dear friend. The thought troubled him so much that he made a decision he had avoided throughout his entire career. Although Elton had always refused to perform with a teleprompter, believing artists should know every word by heart, he insisted on using one at Diana's funeral. The emotional pressure felt too overwhelming to risk making a mistake during such an important farewell. Even with the lyrics placed directly in front of him, the fear never completely disappeared. He later admitted that he worried he could lose himself in the emotion of the moment and unintentionally dishonor Diana's memory. Another image from that day never left him. Watching young Prince William and Prince Harry walk behind their mother's coffin broke his heart. Elton later described the experience as deeply inhumane, believing two grieving boys should never have been expected to face such overwhelming public attention. For Elton John, those 4 minutes inside Westminster Abbey were never just another performance. They became the most emotional, heartbreaking, and unforgettable moments of his entire life. Elton John delivered an emotional and heartbreaking performance at Diana's funeral, moving millions to tears. But did he receive the support he needed from the royal family? What unexpected events unfolded behind the scenes before he took the stage? And how was the dispute finally resolved? Now let's dive into the behind-the-scenes battle that preceded Diana's funeral.
The truth about Diana's final years. When people talk about Princess Diana's final years, They often focus on the headlines, the photographs, and the tragic night that changed history forever. But those who stood closest to her remember something very different. They remember a woman carrying extraordinary pressure while trying to build a life beyond the palace walls. Among those who witnessed that journey firsthand was one of her former bodyguards, a man who saw not just the public figure, adored by millions, but the person behind the title. From his perspective, Diana's last years were marked by constant attention, endless scrutiny, and a search for normality that always seemed just out of reach. Whether she was attending public engagements, spending time with her sons, or traveling abroad, there was rarely a moment when cameras were not following her every move. Yet despite the pressure, she remained determined to connect with people in a way few members of the royal family ever had. Looking back, he recalled how difficult it was to balance Diana's desire for freedom with the very real security concerns surrounding her. She wanted to live more independently, but fame brought risks that never truly disappeared. Every decision, every relationship, and every appearance attracted worldwide interest. Then came that devastating night in Paris in August 1997. At first, those responding to the crash believed there was reason for hope. Diana showed few obvious external injuries, and emergency teams worked tirelessly to stabilize her condition before rushing her to the hospital. But the situation was far more serious than anyone realized. Despite every effort by doctors and first responders, Diana died in the early hours of the morning. Years later, the memories remain vivid. She spent time with Princes William and Harry, hoping to enjoy a brief escape from public scrutiny. Instead, photographers closely followed her movements. It was during this period that her friendship with Dodi Al-Fayed, the film producer behind projects including Chariots of Fire, drew growing media attention. As their connection appeared to deepen, so did worldwide fascination with her private life. According to her former bodyguard, Diana remained a woman caught between hope and uncertainty, seeking a future where she could live freely while the world continued to watch her every move. The world watched Princess Diana through endless headlines and flashing cameras, but was the most important chapter of her life hidden from public view? Why did those closest to her speak of a very different Diana behind closed doors, and what was truly unfolding during the pivotal summer of 1997? Those who knew her closely, Diana's final years were not defined solely by tragedy, but by resilience, compassion, and an enduring determination to live life on her own terms. So, what do you think Princess Diana's former bodyguard has finally revealed about her final years that remained hidden for so long? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.